legacy? What is a legacy?
Don't worry, never gonna do that one again. Alright, so this is a very popular subject. I'm sure most of us have thought about it, or at least heard about it, as per my example earlier, which is an example from the most popular and really only wrapped through modern musical, Hamilton. And at this point, I'm just being condescending. Great. Anyways, this is a popular topic, and we've all heard about it, but I think it's important to have an open, down-to-earth discussion about it because I think a lot of people stress out about it for clearly justifiable reasons, but I hope that my personal realizations and beliefs about legacy will help you kind of compartmentalize your feelings about this topic. It might even help you understand what you want and why you want it. I don't know. Of course, just watching this video won't do that. You're gonna have to watch it and take it in and do some self-reflecting, but maybe this can give you some guidance. Alright, so this is a big one, for sure. We all know the concept, right? What are you gonna do with your life that will leave a mark on the world? What will you do that will outlive your lifespan? Basically, what's something that's bigger than us? Sometimes, like if you look up the definition of legacy on Google, it's strictly implied that legacy is having to do with money or property. But I think a lot of us would hate to think that our existence only matters depending on how much money we make. So I think most of us tend to think of legacy as something that we do or create that makes people think of us in a positive or negative way. Because we really only die when we're no longer thought of, right? We hear this statement a lot. It's actually a pretty well accepted argument to make people want to outlive their lifetime. But I always have a bad taste in my mouth when someone mentions it because I think it's something that we all just kind of say without thinking. I've talked about very briefly in one of my earlier videos the philosophical question, do some lives have more merit than others? Which, when you compare the merit of someone who doesn't really contribute much to society, like someone who just sits on their couch all day, to a Nobel Prize winning doctor, the argument actually has some validity. But that's from an external societal standpoint. In a much more theoretical way, the argument for all lives having the same amount of merit is much more convincing and is basically just every existence is different, and the only thing that each person can prove to themselves is their thoughts, which includes emotions. They may not be able to prove why they have those emotions, but those are the only true, concrete, provable things to each human's individual existence. So if that's the case, the couch potato has the same amount of merit as the doctor, because both of them have the capacity to feel things. The doctor can feel love in the same way that the couch potato can. They can feel anything the same way. Of course, there are differences in the exact way that they feel things, but that's just how life is by nature. It doesn't matter what your occupation is or anything else. But what I'm getting at is, in relation to each individual, their existence is valid. Who's to say that the love the doctor feels is better than the love that the couch potato feels? Because at the end of the day, the merit of your existence really only matters to the one who's existing in it. Each individual's emotions are valid, and who's to say that those emotions aren't good enough? We'll call this concept personal merit for now. However, there's an obvious counterpoint to the argument I just made. And the argument is basically just that the doctor is not creating merit within her own definition of good and bad, she's also contributing to the merit of other people at the same time. In creating a cure for a disease or something like that, she is contributing something that will improve the individual existence and therefore personal merit of a large group of people. This cure makes other people's lives better, whether it's by giving them hope or inspiration or just the chance to live another day, which then heavily implies that the doctor has more merit than the couch potato because she's contributing to other people. But then I guess my question is, does your merit rely on how many people you affect? And this is something that I genuinely don't know how to answer, because the example of the couch potato versus the doctor was very straightforward and black and white, but what about a doctor versus an artist, or a doctor versus a teacher? All of those people affect others in a way that will improve their personal merit. So then how do we know which one is worth more in terms of improving personal merit? See, I think the general answer to this in some way or another is basically just that you need to define your merit by your own standards. You know, the whole stop comparing your success to others, and you need to define success by your own terms, that kind of thing. Although I understand that a lot of cultures reward specific types of jobs as more meaningful or having more merit than others. So to the people who are in those communities, you probably understand exactly what types of job would give you a fulfilling amount of merit according to your community. But I also understand that if you feel a calling to do a job that isn't one of those meaningful jobs, then you probably feel very conflicted and confused. And to those people, I'm very sorry, because it will probably be a very long time before everyone understands that merit isn't a strict, tangible concept like that. Also, this type of discussion always makes me start thinking about how we're defined. We all have some sort of self-identity, and that depends on a lot of things, like genetics or economic standing or something like that. But self-identity is the root of most of our actions. I talk about self-identity a lot, and every time I do, I always say that self-identity wouldn't exist without other people to define it for us. So, self-identity wouldn't exist without other people there to define it for us. But because of that, I think we put a lot of pressure on others to give us some sort of self-identity. In other words, we seek the validation of others, which a lot of times can be a very slippery slope because you're not going to be able to satisfy everyone, right? So at the end of the day, you really should only be searching to make yourself happy and validated. Yet, because self-identity comes from an external place to begin with, there's a justifiable instinct to want to interact and have a good relationship with the people around us who justify our existence. I guess then we just have to be careful who we hang around with because they're the ones we're going to want to be validated by. I bring this all up to get to a simple question. Are actions more important than thoughts? I'm not using the typical, are actions more important than words, because I think that words are actions. Words can affect people. And if you never voice or act on your thoughts, then it's never going to affect anyone other than you. So that's why I think that words are actions. So here's my dilemma. I tend to believe that actions are more important than thoughts because anyone can think anything. We're introduced to so many concepts that it's really not that hard to have one specific thought cross your mind. But you have to believe it in order to act on it. You can think about the fact that the environment is being ruined, but it doesn't matter until you do something about it. You don't believe it until you've acted on it. That's what I typically believe. Even if it's just talking to a friend about it or posting about it or something like that, it's still an active experience and it still proves that you believe the thought that you had. It's the same with advice. You can get advice and understand it and conceptualize it, but it doesn't do anything until you genuinely believe it and act on it. They always say admitting you have a problem is the first step to solving it. And I absolutely agree with that because believing it is in some way an action. But there's something really odd about thoughts only being valid if they're acted upon, because that places a lot of weight in something external. And as we've talked about, and as I believe, our thoughts are the only things that we can really prove and are therefore very important to our personal merit. So then why is it so important to contribute to something that we can't really even prove? I mean, if you haven't had the whole Descartes crisis of questioning whether everything external from you really exists, this probably has never crossed your mind. And you've probably had a very healthy, normal existence. You've also probably felt connected to the world in a normal and natural way. But for those of us who have had the crisis, it's a pressing question. And to be honest with you, I don't really know how to answer it. But I will say, being connected to people is good and healthy. And people can really only connect to you through action. So it's very important to act. The conclusion I've come to lately is if you believe in something, you're going to want to contribute to it no matter what you're doing. And you're going to want to start educating yourself because action should always be informed. You don't have to go to law school and wait until you're 30 to start fighting for the rights of the people you believe deserve rights. You can do whatever it is you're passionate about while still contributing to things that you believe in. Humans aren't just one-dimensional, straightforward beings. We have complexities. What matters is that you're doing what you can. I guess what I'm trying to get at is you don't have to do what's expected in order for it to matter. Because everything you do matters. But I will say, coming from someone who has always been very theoretical and disconnected from reality, you have to participate in the world that you're living in. It took me a while to realize this, but you can't live in a theoretical world until you've fixed, or at least tried to fix, the real world that you're living in. Because, as it turns out, I'm an empathetic person. And I believe that people feel things, and what they feel is real to them, even if my reality isn't real and these people are all just a part of my dream or something. How can I live with myself in this theoretical reality when there are still millions of people out there not even being given the chance to live in an ethical way? Even the people who haven't been born yet. Bad things happen. True. But if there's something we can do to stop it, we have to do it. I understand how hard it is to get out of your mind and start taking action in your life, but it's important and you have to do it. And at the end of the day, that's what's going to outlive our lifetime. You don't have to be in a position where people directly recognize you as a martyr to have a legacy. As long as you're doing things that you believe in, that's the only validation that you should need. Even if you have to force yourself out of your theoretical reality and see the world for what it really is, that's just something that has to happen. And guess what? That's an action. You have to admit there's something in you that knows it's more right to stand up and fight for an issue than it is to just sit back and let it all happen. Even if that thing in you is guilt, it's still important and should be listened to. So then this brings up the idea of the pressure we all have to do something that will contribute. It's hard for a lot of people to understand that contribution doesn't have to be huge. Art is contribution. Science is contribution. Heck, even murder is contribution. It's not good, but it's still a contribution. But we all want our contribution to be good, right? We all want to outlive our lives, and that stems from a natural instinct to want to live long and protect ourselves. So then we all feel this pressure to do something that will affect people, because then that means we'll be remembered, and that means we'll kind of be living longer in a way. And a lot of times this instinct manifests in us wanting to be a doctor or a politician or something like that. But then we also feel this pressure to do what we love, find purpose within ourselves, because like I've mentioned about 1,000 times, the only thing that we can really prove is our own thoughts. But it's very confusing, especially because there's kind of an implication that we have to have it all figured out by the time we're 18. But the advice that I want you to take away from this and start believing is you affect people every day. You may not be affecting those people in the way you want to, but you still have the power to affect them. So start using that power to affect them in a positive way. Support what you believe in, because even if it's a small action, it's still an action. Don't deny yourself happiness or passion for the false idea that you have to be famous to be remembered. You don't have to affect millions of people to be important. Just work on making sure that whatever actions you're taking, they're good. This life matters. You don't need to be stressed about trying to outlive it, because you have the opportunity to see change in your lifetime. Take it. That's all really corny. I know. I'm sorry. But it's something that I kind of needed to hear for myself, so I figured maybe you might appreciate it too. And that's it. Goodbye.